Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Giving a Voice to All Women in the International Economic Environment. My name is Andreea-Deveau. I'm the co-founder and VP of Communications for KindLink. I have with me today a great panel of wonderful ladies from around the world. Thana'A, Business and Professional Women Association Executive Director and Gender Diversity and Women Inclusion Expert. Bianca Tudor, founder and CEO, Elite Business Women and WBAF Senator. Alisa, Harewood, Director, We Are One Diversity Management Consulting, and Caroline Codsi, Founder and Chief Equality Officer, Women in Governance. This is the first webinar hosted in partnership with Elite Business Women and ourselves. Before I go on to my guests, let me give you a quick overview on KindLink. We are a technology platform supporting companies with all their CSR needs, from volunteering and fundraising to impact and sustainability goals measurement, all in one place. We offer the platform for free to nonprofits for them to manage their activity, fundraise, engage with potential supporters, and increase their general transparency in the space. We now have a special area in our opportunities marketplace to connect corporates with charities fighting the COVID-19 crisis, and we are seeing a lot of interest from companies and individuals looking to help. So if you are a company looking to help, go to kindlink.com and get involved. We've also launched a campaign to support the focus on CSR at the core of a company's business strategy, especially since CSR budgets have been cut across industries and initiatives have been put on hold. This campaign will include a series of live webinars and articles in our KindLink Global magazine with actionable insights from industry leaders and specialists helping you bring back impact into the core of your business. A quick final reminder that we have an option at the bottom of your screen for you to ask questions. Please do so and introduce yourselves as you do. Bianca Tudor is the first guest I will introduce to you because Elite Business Women is our partner today for this webinar. Bianca is the founder and CEO of Elite Business Women. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Bianca.
Thank you so much for having the partnership and for creating this beautiful opportunity. I want to take the moment to thank you to all our ladies, Canada, the UK, Jordan. What a beautiful webinar and such a great diversity today. As you said, Andrea, my name is Bianca Tudor. I'm the founder of Elite Business Women. I'm a woman entrepreneur and I really love women entrepreneurship. I've been founding EBW in 2015. We are a company providing entrepreneurial education for women. We have three main pillars because that education is the gateway to fulfill our destiny and to honor our lives. And this is what brought me here today with you. So the main pillar of our activity is the Elite Business Club. We have 11 chapters in Europe, in Romania, UK, Portugal, Italy, Spain, and Moldavia are the two newest Elite Business Clubs we just launched. As well, we have education in our workshops, seminars, mastermind sessions. So this is what we do in terms of education. We connect women entrepreneurs to exchange know-how and to create this ecosystem to empower women. The second pillar is Elite Business Women Investment Fund. We think that it's better to invest in women because they will invest back 90% into their communities. So for a startup, it's easy maybe to have a funding such as $500,000, $1 million, but when you are just at the very beginning and you have you want to do your marketing or to have a website, 10,000 euros, it will be a great sum to start. So we have micro funding scholarships for women startups. And the third pillar, what we're doing today, and I'm really happy to do that, it's our Women for Impact pillar. We believe in giving a voice to all women in the international economy. We believe that there is strength in unity, and we are bringing at the same table women organizations, women entrepreneurs, business institutions to have a partnership, to put all the resources in the same place and to have a greater impact together. And this is for what we stand. So I will come back to you.
Wonderful, thank you. And we're delighted to be your partners in this event. Alisa, Harewood, Director of We Are One Diversity Management Consultancy. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. And I echo Bianca in having complete privilege to be on a panel with such incredible women from all across the world, and that's really what diversity is all about. I've had the privilege of working in 8 countries over 4 continents throughout the world, and my journey has taken me from entry-level assistant to vice president leading a $30 million business unit. And so over the past 16 years, I've gained a tremendous amount of experience in global organizations and just multicultural awareness, which has given me first-hand insight into what it takes to create diverse and inclusive cultures in the workplace. But what I love to focus on more than anything else is really helping women to understand how they can impact and influence change as a woman at a senior level inside of an organization, and specifically women from a BAME background. So I'm really impassioned from a purpose perspective to just enable women to feel that they are 110% more equal to their male counterparts, and really empowering them to understand they can advance inside of a business, inside of life, by just being their authentic self. They don't have to pretend to be anything else other than the beautiful woman that they are. So I love to, my motto in life is I can, and my motto for and the vision of We Are One is equality plus empowerment equals advancement. So I'm just excited to see what we can do today as a panel to help impact some women that are maybe listening out there, to help and impact some organizations that may not understand what they need to do around diversity and inclusion. And I'm looking forward to it.
Wonderful, great to have you. Caroline Codsi, founder and Chief Equality Officer, Women in Governance. Could you kindly tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Of course. Well, hello, everyone. It's an honor for me to be here. I hope everyone is healthy and thriving despite the pandemic. So I'm based in Montreal, Canada. I'm originally from Lebanon. I was born in Beirut, grew up through the Lebanese Civil War. I came to this country with very high expectations in terms of gender equality, had a very ascending career for 25 years in the corporate world. I made it to VP and executive VP of one of Canada's largest medical expertise firms, and realized very quickly that I was too often the only woman at the decision-making table, not enough women on boards, not enough women at the head of organizations. And 10 years ago, because 2020 actually marks our 10th year anniversary, 10 years ago, I founded Women in Governance to sensitize the population on the reality in a country where everybody has this perception that equality has been attained, that we're actually very far from it, with only 5% of the CEOs in the Fortune 500 companies that are women. So there was a lot of sensitization to be done, but also a lot of support to be given to women who too often were not really ready to dive in. They were, very prepared and very educated and very experienced, yet had this, absurd imposter syndrome that I think inhabits us all. And so supporting them in terms of getting them more assurance, getting them more self-confidence, and then working with men to make them understand how important this is for them as well. It's not a women's thing, it's a society thing. We want our economy to thrive, we want diversity to have a role to play within the society. Then we also do work with the government, so both at the municipal, provincial, and federal level. Very lucky to have Justin Trudeau as the head of our country. We do a lot of work with Justin and his team, working mainly around closing the gender gap in the workplace. This is where we play a role. And 4 years ago, with the pro bono support of McKinsey & Company, we have built a parity certification, which is our call to fame, which is that logo that you see right here, where we've had about 60 organizations go through the certification, banks and insurance companies, telecom, etc. And our goal is to see more women, but not only at the at the top levels, but from entry level all the way to the decision-making bodies, to create a very healthy pipeline of female talent. So that's in a nutshell what we do. And we just recently launched in the United States. Our launch was on February 27th, so right before COVID hit, unfortunately, but we also launched a very major partnership with the Girl Scouts of the USA, the largest nonprofit for the advancement of girls in the States, $1.2 billion American in procurement. So we're working with them to certify their vendors so that they can make sure that every hard-earned dollar by the Girl Scouts is spent, towards suppliers that are aligned and do have a vision to allow their own employees to progress, their female employees.
Fantastic. We are very, very happy to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, Thana'A Khasawneh, Business and Professional Women Association Executive Director. Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, to start with, I would like to say to everybody hello, and I hope you are surviving properly the COVID-19 situation. And I'm so honored to be sitting with such a great panel across the world, not only because I'm based in Jordan in the Middle East. And basically, it's always a very beautiful thing to see the power of women all across the world. And it's always impressive how we as women can really change the world. And this is where I start who I am. I am a catalyst of change. I'm a person who I have advocated my life to ensure that I am achieving the change that I foresee on a positive level. Along my journey, I started, like Caroline, in the corporate world, started with the diplomacy at the start and then went into the banking sector. I was always successful, but I was always striving to get my own rights and be treated equally in my in my environment, because it was always a male dominant environment that I used to work with. And always I was fighting for what it should be my own right. Not knowing that that would be my journey later on of how can we really ensure diversity and inclusion at the workspace. At an early age of 23 years old, I was one of the founding members of Business and Professional Women Association. At that time, I didn't know, like after 15 or 20 years, I will come back as the executive director or the CEO who's leading this organization to the success and to ensure that it is growing to the right level. Business and Professional Women Association, it's really a very good example of Women for Impact. It's a membership-based organization that is trying very hard to empower women economically and ensure that they reach the right place that they want and they strive to achieve. We believe in flourishing women because women are capable and they can do it, as you ladies have Alisa actually mentioned. So our mission today is how can we provide the right tools and techniques and the right platforms and pathways for women to strive and excel in their lives. We've run so many programs, I will share with you some, but we are standing on the back, as most of our role models in the organization, we're standing on the back of other women who in 1976 in Jordan figured out that we really need to do something for women. We really need to start something and make the movement for women to flourish and be seen. Thank you.
Wonderful. It's great to have all of you. So here are a few statistics that I want to get you started with for our panel today. If women were to reach their full professional potential, they could add some $12 trillion to the global economy. This is a figure that's well known. For scale, that was the value of the Chinese economy, the second largest one in the world in 2017. Considering the trends today, it will take about 200 years to close the global gender pay gap. And companies in the top quarter for racial and ethnic diversity are 35% more likely to surpass their peers. So there are clear things to be gained from being inclusive, whatever that means, whatever that refers to. However, while things may be a bit better than before or a lot better in certain fields, the journey ahead is quite long and difficult. So I will ask you to give us an overview from your perspective, specifically a geographical one, but also an experience one on where we are in terms of gender equality, diversity, and inclusion in business and generally around the world, and how we can do better. And from your perspective, what are the actionable points for us to take home and start changing in our own ecosystems in order to see the greater impact? Shall I start with Caroline?
Sure, thank you. So listen, obviously the numbers that you're giving are alarming. We've been hearing about them for a while, and sometimes you kind of wonder whether governments, whether organizations are really hearing this, because at the same time that we're saying that it's extremely important for your financial performance to have diversity, it seems still a lot of organizations don't get that. So we have about a third of our publicly traded companies in Canada that don't even have one woman around the boardroom table. So, you know, when we're trying to think, are we getting close to parity? Is it 20, 30, 40, 50%? And then you realize you've got 0% women and 100% men. It's really appalling. So all the work that we've been doing to close that gap means nothing if the people at the top don't understand that message and don't actually apply it. So the tone at the top is extremely important. And the reason why, you know, we've got this sign that says more CEOs is because we need more female CEOs that, you know, start taking their place, because they usually implement a lot of things for more women to come into the organization. We see that a lot. The female leaders will allow within the organization to have a pipeline of female talent that thrives towards the top. You know, in English they say, and I'm sorry, I'm saying in English they say because I usually give conferences in French, so but I am speaking English. So we usually say, if she can see it, she can be it. And this is even more true when we think of diversity as a whole. So women of color, for instance, how many women of color are CEO of Fortune 500 companies? It is so few, and it is so difficult for the younger generation that comes into an organization and has ambition to look at the top of the house and see that they're all male, pale, stale. They all look alike. They all dress alike. They all went to the same school. They probably golf together every Saturday morning. And so what is my role as a younger woman? How do I see myself? How do I envision the future? So if any organization wants to thrive and to be competitive and to be innovative, they really need to invest in diversity as a whole, but in women, because we're not a minority, we're 51% of the population. And ensure that everything that they do in terms of attracting, retaining, compensating, mentoring, promoting women is optimal. So that's, did you have a specific question? Did I answer what you were asking?
Your mic, Andreea.
I'm not hearing you.
Sorry, technology, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for helping me, Bianca. The second part of the question was, what are the actionable points for us to take home and start changing in our own ecosystems in order to see the greater impact? So, you know, if we were going to make a change on a small scale or a bigger scale, what were the top 3 things you would recommend for women to do in order to start seeing impact?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd say it's extremely important to be involved in the community. So social implication, playing a role within an association, playing a role within a charitable organization. I think for networking, this is extremely helpful, because if people don't know who you are, people are not going to be your ambassadors. You need people to talk about you. You need to have sponsors out there. You need to have people recommending you for a board, for a position, or even just for a job. We don't all need to be a CEO or a chair of a board or sit on a board. But I mean, whatever you want, you know, help others and they will help you back tenfold. Also, I think it's extremely important that women learn to negotiate. Too often, we're just happy that we got the job or we got the promotion, and we will just do our work and not demand the salary that goes with it. Men will negotiate so much more, and actually, even in terms of asking for the promotion, women will tend to wait for others to notice that they're working hard, instead of, you know, knocking on the door of the, you know, president or the vice president and saying, I know there's a new job that's opening and I am the right fit for this job. The men will do it, and we will just be waiting on the side and hoping that someone will notice us. It doesn't work that way. And my last piece, and that's particularly important for the younger women who might be listening, is choose a partner, a life partner who is going to support your desire to move forward, who will share the workload at home with the kids and with the house, because to this day, you know, even in 2020, we're still doing 2 to 3 times the workload. And during the pandemic, it is reaching alarming numbers, because we as women have our jobs. Often a lot of women are on the front lines during the pandemic, but when you're working from home and you have to take care of, you know, you don't have a cleaning lady, you don't have a babysitter, you have to do it all. And it's way more taxing than we think. And so all this, you know, for your mental health is an issue. So make sure that you are aligned with someone who will support your ambition and who will share the workload with you.
Wonderful. And actually, one of the things you said, I think resonated very well with Bianca, because I've heard her flag the same thing, that women aren't always good negotiators. You know, they tend to wait to be noticed, whereas men will, exactly as you said, will walk up to their boss and say, you know, there's a job there, or I think I deserve a promotion, or I deserve a pay rise. Bianca, could you answer the same question? Where are we in terms of equality, diversity, inclusion? And actually, because you're Romanian, and this is a statistic I've quoted before, Romania within the EU was not actually doing that bad in terms of the gender pay gap. I think the difference was about 5%. Obviously, the issue that we can look at is that there's not enough women in high positions. So of course, that's always something to look at. But for one reason or another, Romania was doing slightly better than its peers in the EU. So same question to you. Give us an overview of where we are right now from your perspective.
Sure. Actually, I was thinking about what Caroline said about negotiation, and I remember that when I was an employee in a multinational company, I got hired at 19 years old. I was at the beginning of my university degree, and at every 6 months, I was in the HR department to say that I want more, I want to learn, and I want to do something else. And you know, they always told me that you should wait, you should gain the experience, and I felt that this is not good. I have to do something else. So for me, it was not a problem to go and negotiate and ask for what I wanted. But I've seen a lot of women, and if I was to look back at the office, women were getting out from their offices at 10 p.m. instead of going out at 5 p.m. And men always were like, okay, it's 5 p.m., let's go home. So I've seen how dedicated are women, and in terms of negotiating salaries or a new position, they were really quiet, staying to be noticed. And this is one thing I've been noticing. Also, in terms of the pay gap, in Europe, women gain with 16% less than men. We have a rate of 6% women CEOs. 1 in 3 women are managers in Europe, and in Romania, it is a little bit better. And in terms of the entrepreneurship, in Romania, we have 40% women entrepreneurs. In Europe, we have just 29% the rate of entrepreneurship. But it's not only about promoting women in leadership positions. It's about encouraging a more women approach of leadership. It's about being inclusive. It's about nurturing the team. It's about including the team. It's about approaching community when you take decisions, the society, approaching education, family, health system. It's more about that, and it's more about how we tend to do things as women. On the other hand, if I was to look, how can we do better? And of course, we are doing a lot, and I can see a lot of changes. But I think it's still a matter of social stereotype. I think it's still a matter of negotiating a partner with your spouse back home and taking care of the domestic chores we have. I think it's still a matter of educating girls. It starts from a young age. If we look in families, we will see that as girls, we are advised to stay still, not to talk if you are in a gathering. Instead of that, boys, they always are allowed to talk, to ask what they want, to be noisy. So there are small things, but they impact our behavior later on. So it's still a matter of social stereotypes, and of course it is a matter of creating ecosystems. I think that when we create ecosystems, we empower people because we have the know-how exchange, we have the role models, we have as well looking for good practices. We show good practices, and creating ecosystems will empower people to do things. They are ready to go out into society and to thrive. So instead of creating more schools, we should create more ecosystems with role models, show more role models of people who are thriving, not because they are CEOs, but because maybe they have a track in their communities. They do, let's say they are volunteers in NGOs. I love this type of work. And I would be more happy to see more this type of initiatives to empower as well people who are not, let's say, in top positions, in executives, leadership positions, but more the voice of the society, of the community, of the people who are really there, and they are doing an impact, even though it's not at the international global scale.
Fantastic. Thana'A, could you give us your perspective too on the same? Your mic is off. I think technology is not really our friend today, is it?
Seems like that. So I'm saying in regard of Jordan, and let's say in the region where I come from, the gender gap, unfortunately, it's a bit high. And I know it's across the world is the same. But if we look at Jordan and we look at the gender gap, it's we are at the position of 139 from 142 countries. This is our position as Jordan for the gender gap. If we divide it into the education, we are much better because we do have over 52% of females in the education who are pursuing their education. Yet, if we reflected at the workforce and the economic involvement of females, we will find the percentage does not even reach the women participation in economically does not exceed the 15%. On the other hand, the political is a bit much better because we do have, let's say, a government or the authority decision of to really empower women and include them and have more inclusion within the decision-making formula. Yet, it's not where we want to be. And we have done actually, and I would like to share with you that we have done a study about this. And one of our findings was, which was really interesting, was number one is the unconscious bias. And this is something that we all suffer from a gender perspective when we speak about inclusion, is the gender bias about that actually is being practiced by females themselves at certain levels by discriminating between males and females within the family when they're bringing them up as kids. It comes into the workforce, as you have mentioned, Bianca has mentioned in the work, women are more dedicated, it's very true, yet if the chances are given or a promotion is given to the male because they expect him, it's much easier for him to stay longer hours. Yet females stay longer hours in general. There was another study about, I would second what Caroline even mentioned, that when we want to apply for a job as females, unless we meet 100% of the qualifications and requirement of that job, we will not apply as females. Yet males, if they want to apply and they meet 30% of the requirement, they are willing with delight actually and with pride that they should take that job and move forward. And that's all about the confidence. So this brings me to the major point. We as women have to really believe in ourselves. We really have to really understand our capabilities, embrace our capabilities and our skills, be confident about promoting them and talking about them, and trying to motivate other females, young females, through role models or by mentorship. I'm a big advocate also for mentorship because I think mentorship is a very crucial thing that can really support women because we are very multitasked, and at the same time we are acquainted with our emotions, so we don't have the fear of sharing our emotions and getting the support that would be required. The only problem is our personal confidence. So one of the recommendations, just to answer your question, Andreea, that I would really like women to really think about, you need to shine for who you are. Regardless what you're doing, you are a hero. You're a hero of your own life. You don't need to be a CEO. And this is where comes the entrepreneurial thinking. Wherever you are making an impact. You are so impactful towards all the people around you, whether you're a sister, you're a daughter, you're a mother, you're a colleague, you're a wife, whatever your role or hat that you are wearing, you're so impactful. And whatever you would say today as a hero, you will be able to impact the lives of so many people. So gain the power that you have and shine for who you are.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Alisa, do you want to give us your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, you know, in the UK, we try to make diversity and inclusion a priority, specifically over the last 10 years. And around the area of women in leadership, I think they've made the government, you know, put together last year the Gender Equality Roadmap for Change, outlining, you know, 8 key issues that they wanted to tackle. You've got things like the 30% Club that are really doing some great things globally. But I think that what tends to happen is that there are some incredible initiatives that are launched that kind of just stay at a certain level and never really progress into action. Because there's this whole conversation that just continues to go on and on and on. And so I think that whilst we've made strides, I think that we're also seeing, and I talk about it a lot, the long suffering impacts of what we call the Noah's Ark syndrome, where, you know, for decades, companies, rightly or wrongly, have believed that, you know, if you recruit a couple of females or a couple of people from an ethnic minority or underrepresented groups and so on, that you'll solve the diversity issue. You know, we still have a lot of discussions and solutions that need to be addressed in regards to race relations and increasing representation of BAME females within senior leadership. And we need to look at how we can adapt not just the infrastructure, but also the technologies to increase the recruitment and development of women with disabilities as well. So we talk a lot about, you know, wanting to make sure that the gender gap pay gap is decreased and that we're getting more women in, but there's so many nuances in each area, in so many different areas when it comes to really helping organizations to make actionable steps. It's not just about women. We as women, we fit into such a melting pot of different areas. Like I said, BAME, single mothers. I know when we were at the KindLink panel, Bianca, you know, talked a lot about, you know, single mothers returning to the workplace. When it comes to women with disabilities, it's not just women. It's women with a number of different areas that we need to start to discuss more. So we've made strides, and I'm always one for advocating the positive things that we've done to move forward. But the dialogue can't just stop at this one blanket word of women. It has to be, okay, let's now discuss all areas and all aspects of what that involves. And so going back to what you were talking around you know, actionable steps that organizations can take, you know, D&I can't be a tick box activity, and I say it all the time, where, you know, companies create a couple of committees or partners, you know, with, or they partner with the latest like philanthropic movement. I know a lot of companies in the UK have signed up specifically to the 30% Club and kind of left it there. They think, right, we can get some women on the board, we can get some women in senior leadership, and that's what we've done. We've done it. We've solved it. The problem's been solved, and it's just not that simple. So, and I think they do that because they want to. There's a fear of if they do nothing, then they're not seen to be doing anything at all. But for me, you know, for companies to make long-term sustainable change, they need to really create a proper strategy around diversity and inclusion, specifically around this area of women moving up through the ranks, but or just moving into roles that they can succeed in. It may not always be that they want to move to a leadership level. It may just want to be, it may just be that they, you know, they want to come to work and be able to have flexible working options so that they can have a better home work-life balance. As I said, it could be a woman that wants to return to work, but she has a disability and is unsure how she's going to navigate around that. So I think there needs to be strategies that are put in place, clear strategies with identifiable objectives, identifiable milestones that they work towards, and that it's supported by a proper budget. All too often I go into organisations and they're talking about, yes, we're going to do this, yes, we're going to do that. And unfortunately, when you talk to them about, okay, how much money do you have to support this? Yeah, we haven't really think about that. Oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm not too sure we can afford it. If leaders at that C-suite are not going to make D&I part of their overarching strategy, organisational strategy, and put financial support around it, it will fail. They will make small little tiny steps that we can all clap our hands about and be very proud and pleased about, but that nothing is fundamentally going to change. They're just going to be doing the same thing month in, month off, year in, year off. So I think D&I strategy that's linked to the organisational strategy is essential, budget and real commitment. And when I say commitment, I mean really authentic commitment from the CEO of that organisation. If it is not driven by the top person, male, female, and everything in between, if it is not driven there through the heart of that person, not because they feel that they need to do it, because they know that it's the right thing to do and it's going to bring and add so much value to their organisation, then if it's not driven there, again, it will fail. So that's I think that's from an organisational perspective. When we talk about from us as women, you know, what we do as women and how we mentor young women is really important. And I think it needs to start, I think Bianca mentioned it, as early as primary school. We need to get into schools and show young women what women what women in business, what women that are running their own organisations, women that are mothers, that are disabled, that are all types of different colours, shapes and sizes, what that looks like, so that they can see that and understand and gain some level of inspiration and aspiration right from sitting in their classroom, drawing pictures. You know, we need to get in and have more mentoring programs inside of schools. And I think that I can probably speak for us all, that's across, that's globally, that's not an issue that's just UK based or Europe based. It's a real global issue. So we need to empower and inspire and let young women see women that look like them. As I said, all different shapes and sizes, all different abilities, right from primary age, and work with those schools and those young ladies so that they understand what they're capable of achieving. And you don't have to, I talk all the time about not having to be, you don't have to be vice president, CEO of an organisation to be recognised as a strong and powerful and have your voice heard as a woman. It can be all manner of different things, but unless they see that, they're always going to be seeing men coming into these environments and thinking, okay, well, there's no women that do this, so clearly I can't do it. We have to get into schools. So from a change perspective, organisations take it seriously, walk the walk, talk the walk, that's the one. Just say you're going to do it, commit to doing it, put money behind it, have an authentic voice with it. And from a school and a young women perspective, as women, let's get into schools, let's get right to primary school level and inspire these young women right from an early age. I think that's really, really essential.
Wonderful.
Did I cover all of that?
Yeah, you did. As
Okay.
always, brilliant. Thank you. I want to come back to education in a second. In the meantime, I'll remind everybody that we have a Q&A section. Please feel free to ask questions. I want to pick up on something you said, Alisa, and this is something we've discussed before, and I think it's very, very important, and that is having those discussions within companies. I think it's twofold. How do you get the decision makers on board with you know, being more inclusive, more diverse, more equal? I can imagine sort of someone, a woman, let's say, in a management position, going up to her boss and saying, I don't think we're diverse enough. Is that an easy conversation? Is that a difficult conversation? It doesn't necessarily have to be a woman. It has to be someone in an organization that thinks, actually, we need to do more. And then once you've gotten those people in, because you said a lot of people tick boxes and they bring some diversity in, but then how do you make sure people are properly integrated within that company, and how does that become the norm? How does it become a truly core part of the company? And once you've answered, if I could just get everybody else to touch upon that question, that would be great. So do you want to kick us off, Alisa, please?
Yeah, sure. So how do you get decision makers on board? So having worked at a relatively close proximity to C-suite executives that are primarily male, I wouldn't necessarily say they're all stale and pale, but it's definitely, that's the majority. You have to speak in terms that they understand. And the first thing that a CEO is going to ask you is, how is this going to improve our return on investment? That's all he's going to be interested on to begin with. That's going to be the driver. And so a lot of the things that I do when I go into those discussions is really talk about, as you talked about earlier on, if you can increase the diversity in your organization, the skill set that that's going to bring to your business is going to be vast. In order for you to innovate as an organization, you need to have a variety of people from a variety of different backgrounds. And then you look at how that can impact their return on investment. If you're going to stay the same and want to maintain the status quo, then just continue to do what you're doing. But we live in an age where people of all shapes and sizes, not just women, demanding more from an organisation. It is not just about the salary and the benefits package that you can offer a young person coming into the workplace, because I think there's an area that sometimes gets missed out, is that we're obviously women of a wiser, more mature age group, but you've got young women coming up through the ranks that are not interested in all the time, quite a lot of the time, are not just interested in how much money is this going to make for me, how many Gucci shoes can I buy, how many stocks and shares can I invest in. They want to know how you are impacting and changing the world. And so for a business to be able to identify, okay, this is what we're doing in order to create sustainable change in the workplace. And we obviously, the event that I went to with you guys was how corporate sustainability and ED&I link together, and it's about changing the world. If a business does not want to innovate, does not want to attract a wide variety of skills, then they should just continue to stay the same. And so decision makers will all ultimately want to understand what the return on investment is. I believe it's our responsibility as advocates, as pioneers, to be able to champion the fact that return on investment can only happen if you innovate as an organisation. And if you want to innovate as an organisation, you're going to need more than pale, male, stale that sat around this table. You're going to need women, you're going to need diversity, you're going to need people that do come from disabled backgrounds, because they're going to be able to help you understand the technologies that you're going to need to implement as an organisation to be able to innovate even more. So I always take it back to return on investment equals innovation. They know that at that level. I don't need to teach them to suck eggs, but it's getting them to understand the direct correlation between that return on investment needing investment to begin with. So we go back to, it needs to align to your overall global strategy. What is your strategy as an organisation? And ED&I, corporate sustainability, needs to have a big part to play in the innovation arm of your strategy. So that's that question. Definitely return on investment equals innovation in my world. How do you properly integrate it? That's a hard one, because obviously all organizations, different shapes and sizes. Do you know what? I don't actually think that I've ever come across an organization that's properly integrated it effectively, if I'm honest, and that's really sad to say. But it definitely, from a brand awareness perspective, so how are you seen in the marketplace as a brand? Are you seen as innovators? Are you seen as organizations that are diverse? Are you going to be able to attract the young generation that wants to come in and help you build and help you to you know, the next generation of from a succession planning perspective? So I think it comes down to, do you value how you're seen in the marketplace in order to attract the right level of diversity? If you're an organization that are advocating and advertising that you're innovative, that you are, you know, going to help change the world, but your board and your organization doesn't reflect that, your brand messaging, even down to websites, it's simple, and social media presence. If you're pumping out messages of innovation and diversity, but it's not actually visually reflected in anything that you do to build your brand or bring awareness to your brand, then yeah, you're never going to attract the right types of people. So I think the integration element of it will come with how you're seen in the marketplace, because you need to recruit the right types of people first of all. Once you've got them into the organization, you need to be committed to delivering on the ED&I strategy that you put together to begin with. Otherwise, bringing them in will make no difference, because you'll get them in, they'll realize you lied, and they'll walk straight back out the door again. So everything aligns back to this. If it's not driven at a strategic level and taken seriously at that senior level, money pumped into it in order to realize the objectives, the milestones, the actions that you've put together to align to that strategy, it will fall apart. Because when you do bring people in, they'll realize it's false, and your attrition is going to be through the roof. So it can only be properly integrated, I keep saying it, and I'll shut up in a minute, by driving it right from CEO level throughout the organization, and having people in there that are going to, again, at senior level, they're going to continue to advocate for change.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Caroline, your perspective on this?
So I align very well with what Alisa was saying. I think we have a lot in common in the experience that we have in that space. I'll begin by saying that, you know, diversity is a fact, but inclusion is a choice. So many organizations in that space will, I find, use a lot of lip service. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors. Everybody wants to come across as having women at the heart of their strategy, as wanting diversity to be central, because this is what they know that their employees want to hear. They know that this is what their customers want to hear, and this is how they want to position themselves. So when they go at it from a marketing and public relations perspective, rather than a true, you know, HR, human capital perspective, it doesn't always yield the best results. If the two are aligned, and the work around really integrating the resources, the diverse resources, is aligned with the message that they're sending out to either their employees internally or externally to the market, then that's fine. But I can tell you that since we've launched the certification 4 years ago, we have realized by, you know, doing all these audits with the organizations, that some of those that were the most vocal about that issue were not necessarily the best, you know, best in class. They often just want to reap the benefits from a, you know, branding perspective, but they don't always really understand that if they want to reap the true benefits of it, it's not just ticking boxes and saying, okay, we've got that number of women and that number of people with disabilities, that number of LGBTQ, etc. You have to make sure that they feel at home, that they feel safe in your organization, and that you recognize that the importance of their voice, and you also allow them to stay themselves, not say you have to fit in this culture, so you need to become one of us and look like us, because that's not helping anybody. Each individual needs to retain their own cultural background, their own sexual orientation, and this is what brings richness to the conversation. This is also what is going to make for the most robust decisions in an organization. So there's a lot of work to do around not only attracting and retaining people of diversity, but also ensuring that they thrive within the organization, ensuring that they're going to want to not only stay, but also move up the ranks. You're not just ticking boxes. And I think that if you actually want to be very deliberate about these actions, you need to set targets. So when we launched the certification, we realized a lot of organizations who were saying that they wanted more women actually had no clue where the gaps were, what the magnitude of the gaps was, or their root causes. So how can you actually work on these gaps, on closing these gaps, if you have no idea, you haven't really measured, and you haven't set objectives? So that's part of the work that we do with organizations, is get them to do all, that exercise. So last year, how many women got promotions relative to how many men? Now, how many women of color relative, and so on and so forth, and then say, okay, these are your numbers from entry level to the executive level and to the board, but do you want to move the needle? Do you want to go farther? How far do you want to go? When? So put dates and put targets. And I have to say that unfortunately in Canada, we're a little bit behind when it comes to that. And Europe, I know the UK doesn't have any legislation, but they're pretty, they measure a lot. They measure a lot more than they do in Canada. And France and several other European countries actually have legislation for women on boards that have yielded great results, where all of a sudden you have 40% or more. Scandinavian countries are the first ones to have adopted legislation. So all of a sudden becomes an imperative to find these women for your board. So you will start developing more women. And a lot of organizations have implemented, I've been working with France for many years, and I've seen the difference since the law, the Copé-Zimmermann law, how organizations have decided to really put an emphasis on developing women and getting them board ready. And we don't have legislation either in Canada or in the United States. And I always say that when you legislate, you find the women, and when you don't legislate, you find excuses. They're always telling us we can't find the women. And all of a sudden, when, about a decade ago, we did legislate for our crown corporations in Quebec. And all of a sudden, we did find the women. There are 50% of women on all the boards of, there's about 23 crown corporations in Quebec, like your electricity, your liquor board, your lottery, etc. And they have 50% of women. And you compare it to the private sector, it's day and night. So to me, legislation is extremely important. That doesn't speak to how you integrate your diversity, but that at least speaks on how you can, move the needle a little bit faster.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thana'A, and your mic.
Yeah. So I totally agree with everything that has been said, so I will not repeat it, but just I would like to emphasize that it's a decision and commitment by the senior level at the organization. Yet if that decision is being taken, this is where the role starts of creating the right environment and create the right culture, because people are impacted. Again, I will emphasize on this, the unconscious bias. They're impacted by the way they are brought up. So there is a lot of impact on the way they would communicate with their colleagues, their peer female colleagues, and so on. And that would impact. And so my point would be is we really need to involve more women in our conversation. we really need to be targeting men as much as we're targeting females. And it's time for when we speak about diversity, everybody should be included in the conversation and in finding the solutions. Why? Because diversity, whether we're speaking about color, religion, sex, whatever it is, that diversity can always, even authenticity and so on, all of that will create a different kind of a conversation. The conversation will be definitely more challenging, and we know that women are always challenging any conversation. They are more resourceful when it comes to solutions. So basically, if we're sitting in a board and it's all male, the decisions will be just made as usual. When you have a female in that board, the theme of that discussion will totally be different, because they will challenge the conversation. They will ensure that there's a new perspective being presented. They'll be more innovative and creative about what solution. Why should we follow what has been done previously? Maybe we need to be more creative in what we can do. It's all about creating that conversation. Why do I say also in the diversity, gender diversity models and the inclusion, when we want to do training, we need to include men, because they need to learn how to respect other women. And for example, I'll give you an example. We had the flexible working hours law that was launched in Jordan. And it was only like some kind of, it's not a law, it was more of like instructions. And when it was launched, everybody was saying it is for women. And I said, sorry, this would cater for both men and women as much. For anybody who wants to do and utilize that right, it's your right to utilize it. We are not a second citizen. We are equal as men, and we're never supposed to be treated in that way. And that when you have that culture in the organization, when you're including the gender diversity, that would be very, very helpful to include that. Another thing is about having champions and organizations, like for example in Jordan, you've asked if we have any, I agree, there's nobody who has been able to do the gender diversity 100%, but there are some trials, and has been some champions who within the country, actually at corporate level, whether from a banking sector, whether from a pharmaceutical sector, from different sectors within Jordan, that are really putting all their efforts to have a better inclusion within their companies, and to look into the gender diversity and run some trainings at that level. I still believe there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the cultural level. Seniors within corporates, because if we look at the boards in Jordan, only 22% of corporates, private sector corporates in Jordan has women on their boards, and it's only one woman on the board. So basically we are lacking that access to leadership and decision making and real role models who's going to be empowering more females to come on board. But in order to do that as well, there's another thing that I would really like to say. As an organization, you have to have a career path for your employees, and for females specifically, because they need to be goal-oriented, to have a dream that they will grow. There shouldn't be a glass ceiling that, okay, that's the limit where females or women will be getting to it. And the way it can be done is through having a proper career planning and career path planning for the females, for them to explore their potential in the area that they believe they want to explore, and they want to build their capabilities within, and have no limitations whatsoever it is, from either as a manager or a senior manager who is just deciding not to give the chances for females. And if that's the case, this should be kind of having the right policies within that organization. So the relook or re-engineering of your policies and procedures to be more gender sensitive, to be more inclusive, to be more dedicated to supporting women and having the equal chances and choices for everybody within your organization is a decision a senior manager needs to take, needs to be trained. They cannot do it alone. They need some support and some kind of technical support of how to be done. I definitely am going to talk to Caroline, since I'm very interested now in your certificate, but it's something definitely that we really need to look into those. I hope that I have covered the question.
You have, that was great. Thank you so much. Bianca, your perspective?
Yes, actually, I was listening to Alisa, and she said, "What is the return of investment?" And I will say that for every 1% increase in gender diversity, the company revenue will increase with 3%. And when we increase ethnic diversity, the company revenues will increase by 15%. So for a man who is a CEO, I will go and say that this is a good reason to look at diversity and inclusion. And as well, from a company's point of view, 67% of the active labor force are looking for companies who are gender diverse. So it's good for your brand reputation, as well as Alisa mentioned earlier. It's important to look at diversity as well from a numbers point of view. um, in terms of what we can do, I think it's beautiful to explain the benefits to all the employees, to understand that when you have a diverse team, you will have new talent in your team, new skills, new points of view. You can easily enter new markets with the experience of your team who is diverse. So it will be great to start by training employees regarding the benefits of diversity in the company, as well to go to the top management and put some numbers on the table, because it will be a good incentive for them. And in terms of the leadership, we all need teams. We cannot thrive as companies if we don't have a team. And the team, we know that it will need the support, it will need the dedication a woman has. So it will be good to have as many women in leadership positions from this point of view. And of course, that when we take decisions, a woman will say, okay, a part of the budget, maybe we can invest it to a CSR initiative. So as well from the CSR point of view, we know that multinational companies, they have CSR budgets. It will be good to have the key points from a woman and to invest the time in this type of initiatives. So it's good to look at diversity from this from these perspectives. And there are a lot of examples of companies who have been thriving after having more women and maybe more diverse teams in terms of ethnicity, geography, and so on. Then this is my takeaways from this topic.
Fantastic. Before I go on to my next question, there's a question from an attendee that looks very, very good. Sorina, is it possible that we are making the wrong statement when we say we want equality 1-to-1, same work hours, same pay, same responsibilities in the organizations for both men and women? Is it possible that in being equal to men, we should apply a more complex equation that takes into consideration real scientific, psychological, and social differences between women and men? Brilliant question. Who would like to start?
I will start by saying when we're, from my perspective, definitely, when we say about equality, we're speaking about being the justice and basically being treated equally in the sense of having equal rights and being respected for who we are and not being treated as a second citizen, you know? And the reason is because all through you would see that we are underestimated as women for who we are and what we can perform and what we can do and how productive we are. And to be honest, this is not fair. So it's about fairness, being fair with us as women and within the environment and giving us the right of choice. At the end of the day, I have to own my own choices. And I give that choice actually to men as much as it's for female. And when we're speaking about that, and that's why it comes as gender diversity and inclusion, because even men sometimes are being treated unequal. Because when you tell a man you're not supposed to cry, I'm sorry, you are holding him a certain right that you are not allowed to do that. So that's the equal treatment that we are actually seeking. We understand physically I might not be capable to be in the army, but another young female might be willing and she's actually interested to be there. So that's her choice. That's not your choice to make on her behalf. So these are the conversations that we really have to talk about it. It's not about we have different physical, strengths and whatever. It's true, but also that physical strength, it differs between females and it differs between males. It's about the power of choice of an individual and what you want to achieve. That's in my opinion.
Caroline, you look like you would like to add something.
Yeah,
So
I think these comments are brilliant. Thank you. I echo them. I also want to add that, you know, when we do put an emphasis on, let's say, work-life balance and allowing men and women to take care of their young children and to take time off, you know, for fathers when a newborn is in the family, I think it, you know, also sends a message that men are allowed to want, maybe they aspire to stay at home, maybe they don't want to be the breadwinner, and that's okay. Our society needs to accept models, because we talk so much about women becoming, you know, powerful and at the head of organizations, and we don't speak enough of the fact that we also need to allow men to take a back seat if they choose to. And at one point I had put something on social media about this, and there's a young man who inboxed me that you know, he was so thankful about my comments, and that he is subject of a lot of mockery because he's an executive assistant. He's a personal assistant to a woman, and he feels fine about that. He says, so what's the problem with that? And everybody is, you know, insulting him, making fun of him, and saying, you know, saying you're not a real man. And he's, you know, he couldn't understand, saying, you know, what does that have to do with being a real man or not? I like the job. I'm fine with administrative duties. I'm actually married. I have 3 children. I'm as much of a man than anybody else. But, you know, these things in 2020 still exist. And that was a young man who was writing to me. And I thought, it's really shocking that we still, our society hasn't accepted that models can be different. A woman can thrive to be at the top and have a stay-at-home husband. It's okay. And, you know, there was a book written a few years ago in France. It was, I believe, 11 CEOs, all male CEOs, who were talking about the value of diversity, and mentioning that, saying that, you know, if we were one of them, because they each write sort of their own story of their own, you know, major organizations that they were heading. And I thought that was brilliant to say, you know what, there are men who are struggling with mental health issues because it is so much pressure that they don't want to take anymore, and that society is imposing on them. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share about that very important question that we had.
Fantastic. Alisa, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. I think that I echo what Thana'A was saying. I think it's less about, you know, just from my perspective, making the wrong statement about equality. It's about fairness. When I was promoted to vice president, and bearing in mind I was the first female vice president to lead a service and delivery function in that company's 25-year history. That's 25 years it took for a woman, and a woman of color, to be able to get into that type of position. The conversation for me when I got promoted, very happy, the leadership team all applauded. It was a great moment for my career and for me personally. But then the conversations afterwards was around, okay, so your salary is going to be X, which was significantly lower than my male counterparts in exactly the same role. And I think it came down to, from my perspective, and I think a lot of women maybe sometimes feel this, is that it's good enough for me to have been promoted. It's good enough for me to have the title. So I'm not even gonna say anything. I'm just happy to be here. It wasn't good enough for me. My skills, the influence that I could bring to change, all of the things that make me unique as a woman, I need to be paid equally and fairly the same as men that are doing exactly the same role. And if I wasn't, I guess, brave enough and driven enough and just humble enough to, you know, really recognize the voice that I have as a Afro-Caribbean woman, as a Christian in an organization, that sometimes we're fearful of saying what our religion is, but my voice was relevant. It was relevant enough to promote me to this position. So then it's relevant enough for me to demand that I be paid exactly the same amount, because that's what's fair. It's not necessarily around the fact that, okay, I'm a woman, that's a man. It's the right thing to do and the fair thing to do. And if that's not what they wanted to do, then I had made my mind up that I would walk away, because I'm not going to be the advocate for change in an organization, but secretly underneath the surface, you're actually paying me less than, and it was 25% less than my male counterparts. So I don't necessarily feel like it's the wrong statement, but I do see Serena's point. There are fundamental differences between men and women. There's fundamental differences between human beings, regardless of their gender, and that's what makes us just an incredible human race. But it's about what's fair and what's right. I wouldn't expect to have brought on a male manager and a female manager and paid them any different when I was in my role. It's just not going to happen. So why should it be done the flip-flop way around? So yeah, I don't think it's an unfair statement. I just think it's more about fairness, maybe we talk about, rather than equality.
Thank you. Bianca?
Wow, there are a lot of things to say. First of all, sometimes when a woman has to negotiate her salary, it's not about the fact that, let's say, the company wants to pay her less. It's about her negotiation skills. And this is a business. We all negotiate. It's something that business allows us to negotiate. And maybe we should have to pay more attention to negotiation skills and train women how to negotiate, how to pitch themselves in an interview. So about how we can have something beautiful in this initiative. On the other hand, I remember a conversation with a man. He said, Bianca, can I tell you something? And I said, yes. What is this stupidity to say that you want to be equal with men? And I said, well, what's your point? And he said, you know, you are far better than men. I mean, you can juggle with all these roles you have in your life. You can run a business, you can raise a family, you can give birth, you can take care of your grandparents, you can go to domestic chores all day, and still you go out, you are on your heels, you look beautiful all the time. How do you do that? Men cannot do so many things in the same time. So it's not good to say that you want to be equal with men. And on the other hand, another man told me once, because we have women, elite business women, and men say, why men are not involved? And I said, of course they are. They are mentors in our teams. They are speakers. They get to participate as entrepreneurs in our events. So they are welcomed. And I love their leaderships in some points. My first mentor was a man, so I do appreciate their skills in business. But the point is that sometimes men feel that they are discriminated, and they feel that women sometimes have this bossy attitude, and they are always in the business. They have this type of approach, like they own the world now, and they fear sometimes women. This is what sometimes men come and say when we are like in a coffee or at the end of a networking event. It's a little bit, let's say, behind the scenes, but it's true. Maybe we should also see how us as women can include men more to understand the benefits of gender equality, the benefits of having, let's say, equal work for equal pay. Because when we go back to our households, we want let's say, a good salary as well as women for our families. So there are a lot of perspectives regarding men and women and equality. At the end of the day, I think men also have their role in that, also educating the boys in the families regarding equality and treating women with respect, and being responsible for how maybe later on they negotiate the salaries for women in their companies.
Great.
I think just going back to what Bianca has said, and I think it's so important when you talk about like the negotiating skills of a woman, because I find that, and I've had to work up to this particular place. It didn't always come very naturally, because I was so fearful that if I opened my mouth, I'd be called emotional or aggressive or just any other negative term, that in my mind, I thought, I'm confused, because when a man does it, he's assertive, he's dominant. When a female does it, they're emotional and just it just bewildered me. But I do think that you're right, we can learn a lot from men. I've predominantly have male mentors, and one of the things that I've taken real pride in is being able to give them a sense of a woman's world and understand the issues that we face, so that we're educating them. Andreea, you and I talked before, and we talk a lot about even from a BAME perspective, you know, it's really great for me as a Black woman to be able to say I'm discriminated against, but equally it's my responsibility as a Black woman to be able to educate people to why that particular term might offend me, why if you come to me with a microaggression, I might feel a little bit aggrieved about it, so that when they leave that conversation with me, they have learned something new, and they can go and maybe not potentially take that same approach with somebody else. So it is about, I think as women, we do have a part to play in educating men to understand, specifically in corporate world, why this area is so important. When it came to the negotiation of my salary, it was really clear for me. The question that I asked was, okay, why are you not going to pay me the same as you would pay my male counterpart? What's the reason for it? And there is no reason. You know, when you lay out, and we've talked before, Andreea, about uncomfortable conversations, we have to be fearless in wanting to have uncomfortable conversations, but not feel that we have to do it in an unapologetic way. All I need to know is why. If you can give me, and my philosophy in life is if you can give me a rational explanation as to why you believe I should be paid less for doing the same role as my male counterpart, then I'll take it. I'm happy to take it. But you have to explain that to me. So yeah, I agree with what you say. When there is a place for us as women to be able to educate men, and certainly learn how to negotiate as women and be fearless in that negotiational approach.
Well, actually, since we're talking about education, and we said we would come back to it, I think it's a twofold issue. One, education in the general term for women, and a lot of them still do not have enough access to education. But then there's also the type of education we as women can sort of, I don't want to say push, but somehow sort of bring into our ecosystems for others to understand the issues that we're dealing with, so that they do better. It's a slightly more difficult task. It's not you know, someone sitting in a classroom and taking notes. It's being able to take it upon yourself to say, actually, you know, that made me a bit uncomfortable, and that's not the right term to use. Or, you know, when you make a joke like that, one might feel that they might feel humiliated, or they might feel like you don't fully appreciate their input in your team. And it's a pretty difficult conversation to have in the workplace, especially in a stiff workplace. And I've gone to some events and I've heard people saying, you know, we should be calling out people that say offensive things. They should be aware of their mistakes. I actually feel that a lot of women and people in general would not feel comfortable to do that. It's not an easy task, and actually calling someone out just feels very adversarial, which is not a position people should necessarily find themselves in. But at the same time, if we have all this wisdom that we've gathered, if we have all of this experience, is it not right for us to take it upon ourselves to educate others around us on the things we've learned and the things that they could do better in order to promote some of the things that are beneficial for us and them in the long term? So,
well, if I can intervene, yes.
Go on.
Well, I think that, you know, unconscious bias training can help a lot in things like this. For instance, we all know that there's a lot of mansplaining and man-interrupting that goes on during meetings. And a lot of times what happens is women just tend to remain quiet, and they don't dare say, well, George, that was the idea that I shared 5 minutes ago that you're now, you know, amplifying and making it sound like it's the idea that you just got. But what's even more appalling is to see that everybody around the table goes, oh yeah, George, great idea. And you think to yourself, am I mute? Do they hear me? I just said that. And you know, if you do these role plays during these unconscious bias training, people usually go, oh yeah, it's true, we do see this. And then when it happens during, you know, real life, a real meeting, you know, you're going to see a difference. People are going to go like, oh yeah, did we not all commit to stopping this? And what I think is even more powerful than the woman herself saying, you know, hey, I said it. I encourage women to say, you know, I'm very vocal, and I'm lucky that I have a voice that, you know, that projects. Some women have a softer pitch voice. It doesn't help to get heard if you've got 20 people around the boardroom table. But what's very helpful is if another man around the table goes, hey, George, that's rude, you know, and then, you know, let me tell you, George is not going to do it again. So it's something that it's easily implemented, needs to be reminded on a regular basis, because, you know, like the bad habits tend to come back. Or like the man interrupting, they wonder why women don't, you know, speak up as often. They're way too often interrupted by men who sometimes are not even as qualified as the woman to talk about the topic, right? And mansplained as well. So the other thing I wanted to share, what's interesting in terms of the bias, is that not only do men have bias against women, but women have bias against women as well. And we tend to forget that. So there's a reason, I mean, there's a few interesting studies that I've come across, but for instance, there was this university study, I think Harvard was involved in that, where they split a class in two and gave a case study to half of this class. They're both men and women in the classes, and they said, you know, you study this entrepreneur and you study this one, and let's comment on their leadership skills. And that half of this class was working on Howard Roizen, and the other half of the class were working on Heidi Roizen. And the people who were working on the man's leadership skills thought that he was so inspiring, a strong leader, a strong character that will, you know, move mountains, and everybody wants to follow his footsteps, and, you know, only had very positive attributes about him. And when they were analyzing the woman, they thought she was, you know, way too demanding and too bossy and a bit of a bitch, and who wants to work for her. And in the end, it happened to be that it was the exact same person. They only changed Howard and they put Heidi. And what's really scary is that the girls and the boys said the same thing. They all wanted to work for Howard. Nobody wanted to work for Heidi, when they had the exact same content of what the leadership skills of these two leaders were. Or once there was also they were doing surveys and asking men and women what they thought about a little clip, a video clip, where you could see a boardroom table with men and women speaking, and there was one man and one woman among the group that were silent. And they would ask the viewers, what do you think is happening with this man and that woman that are silent? And they would say, well, the man is reflecting, he's strategizing, he's analyzing, he's preparing his response. And they would say that the woman doesn't understand what's going on and she's thinking of something else. And again, both men and women were saying that. So all that to say that, you know, perception is still really difficult, and we really need to work on that. And it's something that I see globally and that I see with all generations to this day.
Brilliant. And I want to touch upon something that Thana'A said, and it sort of plays into the bias by women against women. How do we empower more women to go on boards as women? How do we create more women leaders? This is something that Thana'A touched upon. How do we keep the door open? Because so many times women that have made it to the top aren't always happy to help other women. A lot of them think, well, I suffered a lot to get there, so, you know, everybody else should go through the same. So how do we make sure that once we've reached that point, we're happy to open the door for other women? Thana'A, do you wanna start?
Definitely. I would like to share, just starting from the previous question, just to link it to this one. We have a project actually, it's funded by the Canadian. It's called Launching Economic Achievement for Women. And it works in 3 pillars. One, it's about gender sensitivity at the education level within schools. And Jordan has, in the past few years, we have we had a big conversation and dialogue and conflict on the country level, that our school books refer to, when they're referring to the mother, my mother is at the kitchen cooking and my father at work working. So this is where the stereotyping starts at the education level, and the way we are actually building some perceptions around our kids, even when they're growing. So this is where the unconscious bias starts. When we tell the kid, don't cry like a girl because you're a man, don't run like a girl, don't, there's a lot of unconscious bias. And females, as Caroline have mentioned, uses those words. If we go into the business, for your question, Andreea, yes, unfortunately, although I'm not one of the promoting this concept, because I believe we as humans, we have to practice our being and our authenticity as humans, who are, our main purpose is to help each other and support each other. And because of that, I believe when you as a human, you're not supporting other people who really needs the help or needs the support, we are actually giving up on our humanity and our empathy. So we need to kind of start thinking of all the people who had helped us through the world. And believe me, even you as a female, if you reach any place, you either because you were challenged by someone who told you you cannot do it. So basically that is more of a challenge to your capabilities and you made sure that you will reach there, or because of someone who really believed in you and who pushed you forward. And definitely the person who believed in you was giving you a much more areas of comfort to move forward. So once we remind ourselves of that, we will be able as women leaders, women who are making it, believe in other women. And believe me, the success is amazing. And I will give an example. There's a bank in Jordan. Their CEO is a woman and her deputy is a woman. And the change and the profit and the profit of that bank on the share, they increase their share in the market, is enormous. And the reason, because she believed in women. She was able to empower them. She was tough when she needed to be tough, and she was generous and soft when she needed to be like that. She's a goal-oriented person who was able to lead her organization, her bank, to success. So remember, you as a female, you're giving an example and you are opening the pathway to other women. So when you have that kind of responsibility, you will be able to give more. It's all about the power of giving. The second thing, practice mentoring. Mentorship is a very powerful tool that can help us as women leaders. Because I don't know if you've read a book, it's called The Paradox of Success. Once you are successful, that's the time that you feel you have a lot of fear. And you feel you're alone, you're lonely at the top. Your team is not really having listening to you. They're not confident enough to share some of their fears and some of their even emotions. At that time when you're lonely, this is the time that you really need more people around you. And this is the time for you to give as a woman leader. Your role is now starts actually. It's the power of really serving others and giving more of your time and supporting them. But again, it's all about the education and building their capabilities and getting them to really understand and see the benefit of you as a leader, giving back to your community and to your other women and support them and inspire and motivate them.
Bianca, same question, and if you want to touch upon anything to do with education, the previous question we had, because you have been such a powerful voice among Romanian women when it comes to education, and we've done an interview with you in KindLink Global where you were talking about how important education is. So that's the first part of it. The second part, how do we keep the door open for other women? How do we make sure we foster talent if we can? How do we get more women into management positions?
Beautiful. First of all, regarding education, I would like to say that, of course, it's key. Of course, it's important. It gives us the opportunity and the choice. I would like to say that I am the first woman graduating higher education in my family. And after I've done that, my mother at 45, I think, she started a university degree. Because on her times it was not that easy to do that. So But doing that and taking the opportunity to study, it took me into my first job in a multinational company. It took me into having the opportunity to study abroad. It took me to having the opportunity to learn business in the international environment. It took me into becoming an entrepreneur. So going back at 18, when my grandmother told me, so are you going to move out and be alone in a big city and decide for your life, or you can stay here, we can take good care of you, you will have a husband, you will have a family, and everything is beautiful. And of course it was scary, and in Romania we have a lot of young ladies exiting from schools because they believe that it's not important and it won't pay off. So I would advise, if young girls are here or if they will listen to us, it's really important. It made a difference in my life, and you will get to see a lot of benefits in terms of your way of approaching life, of having opportunities, negotiating for your life, and going for what you want. So yes, education is a key. Elite Business Women, her foundation, it's on education. We have mentorship programs, we have events, mastermind sessions in which we debate how we can grow businesses. We have role models exchange and awareness on how we can take some good practices from other women in the market. And of course, you touched a nerve there. It's not that easy for women to work together sometimes, and I'm not going to say it is, because I don't want to lie. It depends on the tone of the voice you set up when you gather women around. You know, we are dealing with a lot in the workplace, and sometimes we are in a fight mode. We have to thrive. It's not easy in the business environment. We have to negotiate. We have to be go-getters. We have to be the CEOs. We don't have to have emotions. And sometimes we have this type of attitude. It's like on automatic pilot. But if you go and understand that we are not doing on purpose, and go and you don't answer with the same type of an attitude, people will gonna settle a bit, and the women are going to respond, because on a basic level, we all want the same things. We want to have a decent life. We want to be happy. We want to be respected and appreciated. And maybe when we have meetings, we should start by appreciating all the women in the room, and saying that we are safe, we are in a safe environment, and we are here to grow. And I am sure that everyone here has the same mission to grow, because it's not only about us. It's not about being selfish. It's about the next generations. It's about the fact that your girl back home, she will enter in this world, in this business environment, and maybe you want to have a little bit of an impact on how things are working in the business environment, because you want the next generation to have a little bit of more help. So we set an example. We set the tone, and at the end of the day, imagine all women together. We have such a strength to do whatever we want to do. We are capable to achieve whatever we want to achieve. Yes, people will tell you that it is impossible. When I started my business, they told me my boss was a man. I resigned at 25, and my boss told me, you are not going to make it. You want to take like 3 steps in one, and it is not possible. You are going to collapse. And he said, if you're going to succeed, just call me. And at 24, I was, maybe he's right, but I don't know. It's such a fire in me. I just go, I have to go to see what I can do. And 4 years later, he saw me on TV, and he called me and said, well, I have to apologize. 4 years later, I said, it's not about apologizing. I hope that when you will have the opportunity to advise a woman in your office to go for her dream, for her mission, just say that you can try it. You know, in business, it's not that it's either you succeed or either you fail or you learn, depending. I failed a lot, but I've learned a lot in the same time. So just do this for us, for women. Say that it's your possibility to try. and trying, you will get to be closer to your objectives and learn new ways on how to approach your objective. So mentorship is important, but as well raising awareness on role models, authentic role models, people who are doing things, not just on the agenda. We have to talk about women empowerment. It's such a beautiful topic to have on our agendas. Go and see people who are really doing it, because they have the recipe, and it will be good to see the good practices. And also it's good to have know-how exchange. We do that in our mastermind sessions, from people who are doing it, from people who are walking the talk, as Alisa said earlier. This gives such an empowerment to women, because sometimes we are afraid of failing because we support the family. It's about having a decision for our family, for our children's future. When a man takes a risk, he's like, I have to do that. I'm a businessman. Risk is like a natural approach for me. And for them, it's not that with such a big emotional impact. For women, it's like, I cannot sleep because I have to take this decision. If I take this, I don't know what to do with the other responsibilities back home. So sometimes we do have a bigger emotional impact on how we make decisions. And this is why sometimes we seem like we are thinking more, but we are analyzing for the sake of our family, our environment, our communities, and so on.
Wonderful. Caroline, how do we keep the door open?
Listen, I'm reading my emails at the same time. I had until 11:30. I didn't realize. My time here in Canada is 11:30, and I have another meeting that's beginning. So I'm going to have, unfortunately, to sign off.
Okay. Thank you.
I want to thank you for joining. All. It was wonderful being a part of this, and I'm glad I have new friends globally. Please keep in touch and continue your great work. I'm sorry that I have to sign off. They're buzzing me. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you. Great to have you, Caroline.
Take care. Bye.
So then I will go to Alisa. How do you keep the door open? We are running slightly over, but I think that's okay. We want to sort of make sure.
I will try and be quick with this answers, because I mean, Thana'A and Bianca have said a lot already around just setting an example and being a role model. And when it comes to, I want to just address the area of education. So for me, I didn't finish my university degree. So I wouldn't advocate that the education route is not essential for hard skills. It absolutely is, especially if you're going to be something like a doctor or a lawyer. You know, you need education behind you. But I sometimes invariably feel that we often miss the area of the development of soft skills when it comes to education. You know, having a degree and getting as many letters after your name is fantastic, and 100% I advocate that. But I think that all too often universities and higher education institutes, there's a lack of an understanding that soft skills, communication, problem solving, you know, emotional intelligence, adaptability, work ethic. Some millennials and the I generation believe they come out of university and it should just be given to them on a plate. That's just not real. And I think that there needs to be an equal balance, let's say, of hard skills when it comes to education, as well as the development of soft skills. So any women that are out there, really spend time nurturing those soft skills, developing them, because when it comes to the opening of doorways for other women, the example that you set as a leader when you get into a position that you're able to influence and impact change, you will be judged by not just the results that you deliver, but how you are perceived in that organization, not just by men, not just by women. Well, there's only no women, but by everybody. And so even if you're unable at that moment to be able to bring in more females, which is obviously what we want to be able to advocate. For me, very much it was about building my organization when I was VP around a much higher level of diversity. So it wasn't just women I was going to bring in, and I wanted to bring in people of all different shapes and sizes, but it was also about the legacy that I would leave when I was no longer in that role. Luckily for me, well, not luckily, my husband passed away, and so I resigned from my position as VP. But what was really wonderful for me was the legacy that I left after becoming the first female, they replaced me with another female. They didn't go off and try and look for a guy. They replaced me with another female. They then, many months later, brought in the first female COO of a territory. And now they've gone on to have the first female CFO of that organization. And so I think that it's really important that the example you set, even if you can't bring women up with you, is that how you're perceived in that organization, as well as the results that you deliver, will leave a lasting legacy for other women. So I think that's really a really important point. Just make sure that it's not just, you're not focused solely on the results that you're going to deliver, but how you're perceived inside of the organization. And I always say to women that I mentor, you know, there's 3 things that have served me well in my career today. Is I'm very driven, yes. You have to have a high level of drive and ambition. But I've never forgotten where I came from, council estate in Southeast England. Yes, I didn't finish university, but I read and made sure I had as much knowledge as I can. I continue to do that. But I'm very humble about where I started, and I never forget where that is. And also that you just never feel like you have to pretend to be anything other than just your authentic self. Don't feel like you have to become like a man to fit into a man's world. In fact, it's quite the opposite. A man in a business organization or at a senior level wants to see you act and behave as a woman, and bring out all of your feminine charms, bring out all of your knowledge, your soft skills, because that's the skill set that they want you to be able to bring to that environment. So yeah, just be driven, be humble, but most importantly, be yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. We are out of time. It does fly when you're having brilliant conversations. We will address some of the questions we still have from my side and from our attendees to our panelists in writing, and publish their answers in our KindLink Global magazine. We had with us today Thana'A Khasawneh, Business and Professional Women Association Executive Director, Alisa Harewood, Director, We Are One Diversity Management Consulting, Caroline Codsi, Founder and Chief Equality Officer, Women in Governance, and Bianca Tudor, Founder and CEO, Elite Business Women, and our partner for this webinar. Thank you for joining us. We will have the webinar and accompanying article available in our magazine, kindlink.global, and in our newsletters. You will also see them in the Elite Business Women ecosystem. And until next time, everyone stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.